I'd like to introduce our guest speakers this evening, Ray and Molly Cramer. We're glad to have them here, and we're glad that you're all here to listen to them impart some of their pearls of wisdom that they've gained over the years. And so with that, I'm going to ask you to join me in welcoming Ray and Molly Cramer.
Well, thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, for coming tonight. And when he said this is ArtSpeak evening and the kind of things that went on, I thought, well, wait a minute, how can this all fit together? I guess my first point would be that we just celebrated our 50th wedding anniversary, December the 28th. And that's an art in itself, isn't it not? I mean, that's an art in itself. But we have had just a wonderful time as a husband and wife and a mother and a father, and have enjoyed literally every minute of those 50 years and all the times that we've shared with our family. I would like you to know that we're both from the Midwest. I actually grew up in Illinois. I grew up on a farm just down near Galesburg, Illinois, about 15 miles southeast of Galesburg. My father used to tell people that we lived at 11th and Plum, 11 miles plumb out in the country, and but it was a wonderful experience. I learned a lot of things from that experience of growing up there. My wife grew up in a small town in Iowa, in Hedrick, Iowa. So we're sort of country people and small town people and no town people, but we have similar interests and backgrounds in thinking about how important education is to everyone. And I think there's many ways to educate. You know, this is an education, what you heard tonight, and the expression of how they have become educated in so many ways, but as was expressed by Chip, that it all has to do with communication. It all has to do with expression of cooperation. It all has to do with passion. It all has to do with work ethic. It all has to do with how can this benefit me for the rest of my life. I've always preached all my life that music can benefit students and art can benefit students in spectacular ways in whatever field they choose to use as their life's work. They will be better people. So about us and about tonight, if you have a handout, I just want you to know that particularly on the second quote that is listed on the handout, that don't compare your life to others. You have no idea what their journey is all about. We don't know your journey. We're going to tell you a little bit about our journey. And our point is that our journey doesn't have to be your journey. That's not the point of what we would like to share tonight. The point is we all have a journey. We choose our own path. We choose our direction that we want to go. But we all have to make decisions. It is a decision-making process. That's life. As conductors in music or in art or in drama, there's decision-making involved, and how the decisions that we make can impact the lives of the people around us as well as our own life. And so with that in mind, we'd like to just proceed and just share a little bit about our journey. And if it's not relevant to your journey, that's fine. If there's a couple of things that you go, oh, that's interesting, I'm going to remember that, then that's great too. We always feel like that if anybody can hear and gain something from something we might share, even if it's one person, we feel like the evening has been a success. I met my wife. I just want you to know that I didn't date much in college. That's true. I really didn't. And even into graduate school. I was in my last month of graduate school, as a matter of fact, when it was raining and was going to orchestra practice, and my good friend was a trombone player also, and he had to go by and pick up his girlfriend's horn. So we go by the apartment house to pick up his girlfriend's horn so we can go to orchestra practice. And so his girlfriend came out of the apartment with her horn and Molly, who wasn't in the orchestra. But that's okay. And I thought, gee, this could be interesting. And we talked a little bit on the way down to the campus. And after the orchestra practice, I got to talking about, I really enjoyed talking to Molly a little bit. I said, and in my mind, I might call her for coffee. And so I waited a whole week to get my courage up. And so I called her and I said, Molly, you remember me? I'm Ray. Yeah. She didn't say, no, I don't remember you. No, she didn't say that. But anyway, she said, sure. So I said, okay, let's go for coffee. And this was a Thursday night. So we went out for coffee after orchestra practice on Thursday night. And we had a really great conversation, lots of fun. And so I said, when I dropped her off the apartment, I said, how about a movie tomorrow night, Friday night? I don't have anything pressure. Let's go to a movie tomorrow. Yeah, okay, let's go to a movie. So Friday night, we went to a movie. Alfred Hitchcock, The Birds. Yep, that was the movie. Well, you know, that there's some, anyway, so we went to the movie, and so after the movie, we dropped her off to the apartment. I said, you know, tomorrow night, you know, why don't we go have a hamburger? That's all I could afford, by the way. Let's have a hamburger tomorrow night. And so she said, sure, let's have a hamburger. So we went for a hamburger on Saturday night. This is the third night in a row. And we finished our hamburger, and we're talking, and we're walking, and we finally looked at each other, and we go, you know, let's get married. She said, yeah, why not? I mean, when I know a good thing, I don't waste time, you know? I don't waste time. So on our third date, we decided we were going to get married. And she actually agreed. Now, she will tell you later that I never did propose. That was just an understanding that we were going to get married. But, you know, this is our 50th year. Now, I want to share this very brief story because it's really true. I've always been a person that wants to learn about whatever it is I'm going to become involved in. And so I thought, okay, if I want to really make this marriage be what I think it can be, I need to find out as much about married life as I possibly can, because obviously I knew nothing about it at that point. So our church was sponsoring a seminar for young married people, and the person who was doing the interviewing was the pastor, and they had a gentleman, Sam, that came in that was going to share his experience because they were just going to be celebrating their 50th anniversary. So I thought, I need to go to this. So I went, and the pastor is interviewing Sam, said, now Sam, I want you to tell me what some of the most important things are to have a successful marriage that lasts at least 50 years. And Sam says, well, now, he said, I think it's really important that you do something very special on really special anniversaries. And the pastor goes, well, for example, Sam, what'd you do on your 10th anniversary? He said, my wife didn't even know about this, but I made a plan and reservations and airline tickets, and I took my wife to Hawaii for 10 days for our 10th anniversary. Everybody applauded that. That's really fantastic. You know, that's expensive. That's a great travel. I'm sure she'll remember that for a long time. Well, Sam, what did you do with your wife on your 25th anniversary? He said, well, I had to think about that a long time. And he said, my wife has always wanted to do some international travel. So I arranged a trip, and we went to China. And we spent 25 days touring China. And everybody goes, wow, that's really special. But what do you have planned, Sam, for your 50th anniversary? Sam says, I'm going to go back to China and get her. So anyway, we actually never
didn't go to China.
I didn't go to China to get her. Well, that's sort of a little bit of our beginning, and we have had a great time, and we've enjoyed our life together. And I think Molly wants to share a little bit about. She sort of has a 50-year idea of her own.
A little over 50 years ago. A
Can you
little
hear?
over 50 years ago, we were picking up the invitations to our December 28th wedding. And even though there were monumental changes going on in our country because of John Kennedy's having just been assassinated, for us personally, it was going to be going from singles to being married. I'm sure we didn't think down through the next 50 years to what it would take to make a happy and successful marriage. We only knew that we were in love and that this was God's plan for us to go through life as Mr. and Mrs. Ray Cramer. Looking back over 50 years, there have been so many blessings, spiritually, personally, and professionally. If we had to think of only one key ingredient in all of them other than our faith, it would be setting priorities, His mine, and ours. There is no one set of priorities that's set in cement and will always stay the same. It takes setting those priorities together and being flexible where and when needed. Not too long ago, we got an email of a YouTube video that was a man using various sizes of rocks, like river rocks, to build things. Most of them didn't have long, smooth surfaces that would make them easy to stack on each other, and the size variance was dramatically different. Now, if they had all been like bricks, straight edges, they're all the same size, they would have easily built a wall. Since they didn't, it took an immeasurable amount of time and patience on that man's part to stack them into towers and eventual forms. They didn't go together in straight lines, but were balanced in such a way as to hold the whole thing together, not with cement, but with how they fit together and the weight of one distributed in just the exact way to keep them from slipping. It is the same with priorities that we set. They aren't all the same weight and size, but each one has a place in balancing the whole. Often the smallest ones are the most important. Moved slightly out of place or removed altogether, and the whole thing collapses. The priorities in our marriage have varied in size and have shifted out of necessity at times. However, the top priority of us, not me, has always stayed the same. But now let's go back and see how that life started together.
Well, the idea for this kind of presentation came several years ago at a poem that I read at a funeral of a friend. And the poem was done by Linda Ellis, and the name of the poem was, "How Do You Live Your Dash?" Now, the dash that it was talking about was the dash that comes between our birth date and our death date. And I think that it sort of impacted me in thinking about our lives together and how that we needed to respond to our professional priorities and our personal priorities. But I'll just read one stanza of this poem. I read of a man who stood to speak at the funeral of a friend. He referred to the dates on the tombstone from the beginning to the end. He noted that first came the date of birth and spoke the following date with tears, but said what mattered most of all was the dash between those years. I believe we all want to make a difference in people's lives. And that was spoken to earlier tonight, when Chip was talking about these fine young people that performed tonight. All of us as educators, as parents, as people who just communicate with our friends and our relatives, we all want to make a difference. We want to make an impact in other people's lives. And whatever form that takes, in whatever direction that goes, and whatever journey that takes, that's something that I really am interested and we're very interested in doing. And we've been thankful to have the opportunity to spend so many years with so many fantastic people, both at the younger age and the older age. So a little bit more about, priorities and obligations and personal family considerations. Once again, Molly has something that she would like to share about that.
We've always been a partnership, not a competition. We each brought different things to our marriage, things that were complements to what the other was. We've always tried to bring out the best in each other. We're proud of each other, starting with who you are rather than what you do. We are encouragers and go-for-it people to each other. Just as Ray knows I support him in all that he does, he has always supported me in what I have done. I can honestly tell you that Ray Cramer is my best friend. However, even though we are one, we've also maintained our individuality. We aren't so absorbed in each other that we don't relate to other people. We have interests in common and interests that are separate. We believe that our outside interests are what keep us interesting to each other. We have never had a division of labor in our home. Our job descriptions are basically the same, except I would never have conducted the wind ensemble. Ray isn't that long-suffering. And Ray doesn't grocery shop. Our budget wouldn't have stood that. When we were first married in 1963, I worked too. I taught school. Our combined salary was a little over $8,000, with Ray getting $200 more than I did because he was head of house. We saved my salary so that when we had children, I didn't need to work in order to meet our financial commitments. I realize that's harder to do now, but living within one's means is a must. We had 2 children. When they were growing up, we always maintained our family time. The 4 of us played games, read books, hiked, water skied, snow skied, camped, picked and snapped beans together. Well, okay, the kids didn't think that was much fun, but it was together time. Ray and Jer played horse. When Heather was in high school, she and Ray would go for breakfast one morning a week to have time together. When Jer was in college at IU, he and Ray would play racquetball at least one noon a week. We loved all of it. But we also protected our us time. We raised our children on we were the two of us, long before we were the four of us, and we will go back to being the two of us when you are gone from home. We never felt guilty when we did things by ourselves to keep connected, so that when we became the two of us again, we would still be connected for life. It wasn't something that could be interrupted while Heather and Jer were growing up. The memories we made needed to be made together, not just one of us making the memories to come home and tell the other one about. In order to be our memories, we both had to be there. The us time is a must, both helpmate and playmate. Helpmate time is what makes the household run as smooth as possible. Playmate time is dinner and dancing, planning a flower bed, refurnishing furniture, or just going by a walk by ourselves. It's what you do with and for each other. I know that babysitting is very expensive these days, but young couples need to find other people with children to trade babysitting with to have a night out. Protecting your time applies to singles and those without children as much as it does to those with families. You need to do things away from the band room. We modeled our mutual love and respect for each other and admiration for each other in front of our children. They always knew how we felt about each other. They also knew we were a united front in parenting. Certainly we didn't do everything right in raising our children, and they'd be the first to tell you that. But they knew they couldn't break us. We were a good balance. I would overreact with, "You what?" while Ray would calmly respond with, "Oh, really?" I realize when both parents work, finding time for each other, family, and yourself is difficult, but it needs to be one of those priorities. You don't want to end up like Harry Dinkle. You remember him, the band director from Funky Winkelbean? You never saw him out of his band uniform until he retired. In one cartoon, he says, "The nice thing about retirement is I have more time with my children." The problem is the only time he has with his children is on the picture of them on the desk beside him because they're gone from home. Or the cartoon that has a man and a woman in the front row at a wedding, obviously parents of either the bride or the groom. The man is saying, "Alice, you know how busy I've been for the last 25 years. Refresh my memory. Is that our daughter or our son getting married?" These are humorous but sad commentaries on how lives can get out of balance. Our friends have always been very important to us. We all value friendships, especially the friend who is a role model that makes us a better person. For me, that was Ruth Ebbs, widow of Fred Ebbs, Ray's teacher, mentor, boss, and colleague. She modeled for me the pay it forward 30 years before that became a movie. When we moved to Bloomington, our kids were 1 and 2. Their daughter was out of the house in college. But on many occasions, she took our children for the day or even overnight. I said to her once, "I can't pay you back. You have no little ones for me to watch." Her reply was, "You don't do it for me. You do it for someone else who needs it." She taught me that you don't keep count. You need to do what needs to be done.
One of the things about being involved in education and with young children is that there are times where you do have to make a decision. I was new on the faculty at Indiana University at a young age. Our children were still young. It's important that within 6 years, you have to be able to prove your worth, that they want to put you on a tenure track or keep you on tenure. And so almost every opportunity that I had to do something, I almost felt like I needed to do it because it was something that could go on my resume. And yet, as our children got older into grade school and became active themselves in various kinds of activities, I knew that I was going to have to make some tough decisions about what my responsibilities were going to be and what my priorities were going to be. I finally arrived at the decision that whatever my job is and what I'm doing at the university, if I can't prove that I'm being successful and effective with the students that I'm with and the work that I'm doing for the university, then it's not going to do me any good to go out and take a guest conducting job at Greene County, band festival or whatever. Because as the students, as our children got into school, they became active in sports, they became active in music, in drama, in literature, in art. And I thought, I don't want to miss anything that they're doing. I finally arrived at the point where I would take their calendars and see what their school activities were going to be. And I would mark on my calendar their school activities. And then if somebody called me to do judging or to do guest conducting or do a clinic, I would look at my calendar and say, I'm sorry, I'm already committed for that weekend. Because your children are only going to be in school so long. And I didn't want to miss what they were doing. I wanted to go and be a nervous dad at the wrestling meets. Or I wanted to be the nervous dad at solo and ensemble contest. Or my wife would be the very nervous mom pacing back and forth in the bleachers right before my son wrestled, or before our daughter did cross country, or whatever the case may be. And so we were at their activities. Whenever anything was possible, we were there. And as adults, after they were out of college, individually, they both would thank us for spending that time with them as they were growing up and being a part of their activities. Guess what? I still get asked to do guest conducting. I did get tenure, and I had a wonderful 36-year career at Indiana University, which is pretty amazing. Not that the career was amazing, but it was amazing I was there 36 years. But anyway, it was a great opportunity for me to interact with fantastic young people. So I think that part of the impact for me of being involved in education and being involved with young people's lives is because of the iconic figures that I was involved with and I was allowed to associate with and to be modeled by when I was growing up as a young musician. Some of the names have already been mentioned tonight, but without those iconic figures, it would not have been successful. And I shared with one of the bands today in rehearsal that my beginning in music was very auspicious because we had somebody visit our elementary school. And I grew up in the country. I had a 2-room schoolhouse. One room was grades 1, 2, 3. The other room was 3, 4, 5, 6. And somebody came out during my 6th grade year and showed instruments and even took the courage to play a couple. And I became engrossed and thrilled with the glissando on the trombone. I thought, this is cool. And they started asking, well, who wants to play this, who wants to play that? I want to play trumpet, I want to play flute, I want to play clarinet. Anybody want to play trombone? I looked around the room. No hands went up. I said, okay, I'll be first chair, I'll play first trombone. So I chose trombone. For that reason, well, anyway, I found out that there was something more of expectation than just choosing an instrument. Oh, I had to practice. Okay, that means they're giving up playtime. So commitments, all of a sudden commitments started cropping up, and they were getting in the way of the things that I really enjoyed to do with my friends around the farm, and swimming and fishing and hunting and all that kind of stuff, and so I quit. Trombone, my father was quite upset because he had sold 2 pigs to buy my trombone, and it just sort of sat in the closet. So anyway, that summer between my 6th grade year and my junior high year, 7th grade, there was a knock on our door, and there was a gentleman that came to the door, introduced himself, and he was the new music teacher in our community. And he asked if my mother answered the door, and he asked if I was there. How does he know me? So I came out, and he said, Ray, I noticed on the junior high band list that your name is not on the list for signing up for junior high band. How come you're not on the list? And all of a sudden, I felt so guilty. And I thought, bad, I didn't have any fun. Why would I want to do this? He said, because I think I can make it fun for you. And I said, well, okay. And he said, you still have your trombone? And my father pipes up, yeah, it's in the closet upstairs. And so I went and got my trombone. He gave me a 45-minute lesson on the spot in my living room, in the front room, and it was the best experience I'd ever had. Within 45 minutes, I played better than I had the entire half a year before that. So if it hadn't been for Don Zimmerman, I'm not sure what I would have done. So he was my first iconic figure, but it's so important that we have those kind of people in our lives that can force us and help us achieve a goal, achieve a commitment, and to move forward in something we never thought we would do. The other thing that's important in our career is that our faith has always been very strong. We've known from the very beginning of it when we got married. We went to church the day after we got married. And we knew that that had to be a part of our life to make us strong, because there are things that people face all through their careers, all through their lives, that without some kind of strength that can help us from the outside, it just doesn't work. And so that's always been very strong for us, that there's always been a focus on that. I conducted church choirs for 18 years. We taught Sunday school class. It was been a great experience. We have so many friends that pray for us and think about us all the time. And I'll have to say that without that kind of support, then the next part that we want to talk about is that I'm not sure how we could have dealt with it, but it was very, very difficult.
We hope and pray that none of you ever have to face the death of a child. However, sorrow, loss, and death are part of life. They're also priority changers. On June 22, 2009, we had to redo our priority rocks in an instant. When our daughter Heather was killed in a bicycle accident, our priority changed from us, Ray and Molly, to us, Ray and Molly, Phil, and 4 kiddos who needed help. And they needed us at that moment and would need us for the next several years.
One of the things we had to find out how we could deal with this right off is we have to come with grips. We don't want to believe it. So coming to grips with that kind of loss is something we had to face right off the bat. So many people that have tragedy strike them like this, they want to deny it and go into a sense of denial. For us, we knew that whatever was down the road, it was going to be different. We knew that. But we also knew that we had to face it and we had to come to grips with what that meant. That also meant acceptance, that we couldn't deny it. It was a reality. And the children growing up is going to be a reality. For the next several years, they're still very young. So coming to grips with it and accepting it was something that we knew that we had to do. And without that help, without that strength of faith, and with our friends who were really gathered around us in such a strong way, that it would have been very, very difficult for us. But we know that there's a plan, and that we know that that plan will be revealed at some time. But it's been tough and difficult, but we know that everything will be okay. The one thing that I am very happy about is that so many people have donated money, that there are 3 fantastic pieces of music that have been composed in her memory that I have a delight to conduct on various kinds of honor events. I had students come to me and say a couple of things. Number one, this just happened not long ago, that I did a piece called One Life Beautiful that was about Heather, and another piece called From Glory to Glory. And we did both of those pieces in one concert. I had the students talk about the pieces. It's hard for me to talk about those pieces. I find that I'm okay conducting, but if I have to speak about the pieces, I can't do it. But I can conduct them just fine. And the student said, you know, through this experience and your passion for what that music making is about and what the music making is, I really feel like I know your daughter. And the other thing that was very important was this, and that is that a student just 2 weeks ago said, how do you do that? And I said, I feel a connection. Every time I conduct one of those pieces, I feel a strong connection with our daughter. And one of the pieces, the composer is convinced that when she composed that piece, that our daughter sent her the melody for that piece. So all of those things are now joyous. It's fantastic. And we're delighted to keep her in our memory and honor her through this music-making event. Just a couple of minutes, we'd like to talk a little bit about professional considerations. And I've always liked this quote by Anna Quinlan, and maybe some of you are familiar with her or not, but I really have locked on to this quote. You cannot be really first-rate at your work if your work is all you have. I think that's wonderful. That we've always tried to develop friendships and things outside of our work environment, because all of those things complete the things that we do in life. So, anyway.
Our life has had eras to it. BC, WC, AC, and RGC. That is, before children, with children, after children, retired with grandchildren. My involvement with Ray's professional life has been different depending on which era we're in. Before children, I didn't know much about music when we got married 50 years ago, but I've had quite a music education. That doesn't mean I always like everything Ray's groups play, but I sure have learned to appreciate it all. I accompanied students at contests, attended concerts, conventions, and was always the band mom. The first few years we were married, I was in summer band, always on an instrument where my lack of ability would do the least bit of harm to the musical integrity of the band. With children, when Heather and Jer were little, we would go to marching rehearsal, and when they were old enough, they began going to Dad's concerts. They were always part of the band family. During this time, I was not able to go with Ray very often when he would guest conduct or attend conventions. We both missed that, but because we were staying connected in other ways, we knew that the time would come again when I would be able to do all those things with him. And of course now, I go to as many of them as I can. Through the years, we had many faculty receptions and dinners at our house, and it was a great privilege to have so many wonderful conductors and composers eat at our table. Carl Husse even asked for my recipe for corn pudding to take home to his wife. Hundreds of great students like Mark, Mike Fisk, and Kelly have been in and out of our home. Hundreds of students have been at our home for holidays and games of basketball in the backyard. Many times our driveway looked like a used car lot. Or sometimes they came because they needed to talk something over with people who weren't their parents. This prepared us as parents for the time when our own children would need to talk to other adults besides us. Our children had tons of great babysitters from the band list and a lot of great brothers and sisters to relate to. The band belonged to all of us. After children, I've always been at Ray's concerts. In fact, in our dash together, the only concert I ever missed in Bloomington was when my dad had open heart surgery. The important thing is that Ray always wanted me by his side, so even through the busy years, I was there in spirit with him. When we are apart, we talk on the phone every night. Through the years, I've been his sounding board and chief editor, and now in our RGC, retired with grandchildren, and life is very different, together all the time. We started rehearsing for this part of retirement in 1990 when we began going to Japan for 3 months at a time, together 24/7. We never had a problem with it. We are blessed to be compatible and really enjoy each other's company. The retired joke of "I married you for better or worse, but not for lunch" doesn't apply to Ray because he always eats the leftovers. Nor does the one about he's always underfoot and even alphabetized my spices apply, because Ray is enjoying a busy schedule of leisure activities mixed with professional gigs. And if any of you have ever seen his office, you would know that he never alphabetized anything. With twin 7-year-old granddaughters right down the street, we have playmates whenever we want. And at our age, it takes both of us to keep up with them and their boundless energy, and they always expect to see us both at the same time. As Ray maintains his professional schedule, I still love going and being with him. When he did the New Mexico All-State in Albuquerque a few years ago, it was shortly before Heather's death. She and the 4 grands that lived there, ages 3 to 6 at the time, were able to attend. It was their first indoor concert. They'd been given instructions by Mom to not talk during the concert and only clap when Nanny claps. However, we did sit in the back of the room in case we needed to make a quick exit. No one had to leave, and the only whispered questions were one asked for the 5-year-old who wanted to know why Papa was holding a stick in his hand, and the 6-year-old who wanted to know why the harp was wearing a mitten when it was pushed on stage. It pleased Papa to no end to hear that on the way home they wanted to know when it would be his next concert they could attend. This was especially precious as a few months later Heather was killed. A few months ago, that 6-year-old, who is now 11, almost 12, played a duet on his baritone with Papa on trombone.
And let me tell you, it was a really bad experience. He played far better than me because I had not practiced much in the last years. And when he started playing the baritone, and he has such a fantastic ear, he's been playing drums and guitar and all this stuff since he was about this high, and he picked up the baritone, and his ear is so good, I don't care what the tune is, within 5 minutes he can play the tune. And all of his little brothers and sisters were all dressing for Halloween, and they were all playing some kind of a character from Star Wars. And he carried his baritone along, and as they went up to the house, played the theme song for them as they went up for the trick-or-treating. It was really cute. It was just fantastic. I quietly put my horn away and said, "Good job, keep up practicing, kid." Okay, so, one of the things that I've noticed over the years is the problem that I see in young teachers and getting involved in how they deal with stress. and the business of the great risk that there is in teachers, and the problems that they face, the schedule that we face, and the stress that I see happening, and the burnout that I see happening is very disturbing to me. The percentage of young teachers who enter the teaching profession, and I'm not just talking about band, I'm talking about teaching in general. I'm talking about people that have a tremendous dropout rate after only 4 or 5 years of teaching. It's astounding and it's frightening. I'll go do a clinic somewhere at a state convention, and I'll look out in the audience and I'll ask, okay, how many of you have been teaching for less than 5 years? And a gob of hands will go up. And I'll say, how many of you have been teaching for 10 years? And a few more hands. How many of you have been teaching for over 15 to 20 years? And hardly any hands go up. And most of the hair is still dark and not gray. And I say, we need to make sure we keep people in our profession. We need to keep people in the arts so that they can have the kind of impact that young people need to have in the arts programs in our school. And I tell people when I go do an honor band, and here's maybe 50 or 60 schools coming together to perform in 2 or 3 days and putting on a wonderful concert in 3 days. From that many, and I ask the parents that are there, I say, I want you to look on each wall of this auditorium. There's no scoreboard. You name me any other time. Outside of the arts programs where 40 or 50 schools, children from 50 schools, the children could come together in a non-competitive atmosphere and make art and music the focus of what they do in 2 or 3 days. And it's really true. And whatever we do, we have to make sure we maintain that. I think that there are some signs for early burnout that I think we have to be careful of. And I think that as mentor teachers, those of us that have been in the profession, we need to be able to help those that are in the profession and young teachers and recognize the signs that you see it creeping up on them. Number one is they dread work. They get burned out from what they think is the amount of work that comes to them. Number two, they get tired and they lose their energy so quickly. They become depressed. They get bitter about some of the things that happen in the job. There are certain kind of things that irritate them. Maybe it's co-workers, maybe it's other things, but I see bitterness creep in, and that irritation is there. Relationship problems. They become envious of other problems where they see other things succeeding and they're not, or they just literally don't care. There's a physical and mental, emotional exhaustion that happens. And there's shame and doubt, and there's cynicism and callousness and failure and a sort of a hopelessness of any crisis that comes along. As mentor teachers and of people that are concerned about young people that are in the profession, I think we have to be aware. And anything that we can do to communicate a helpful hand, a positive comment, to help them see the future in a different light, I think we have to do that. It's very, very important.
I always tried to relieve Ray of as much of the daily routine things as I could. I always chose to be the errand runner, household manager, and paperwork person. This not only reduced stress for Ray, but also gave us more time for recreation and relaxing together. In retirement, we share even more of the household duties so we can have more time for bike rides and coffee shop stops. We've made major decisions together. One of the things we never had was stress over money, not because we were dripping with the stuff, but rather because we've never had any financial disagreements. We are of the generation that was before plastic money that can result in overspending or impulsive buying that piles up debt that leads to money fighting. Even now, we don't buy anything that we can't pay for. We communicate, we talk things over, out, and come to an agreement. We compromise. We have never used the silent treatment on each other. It's not in Ray's nature, and I'm a Murphy, and the Murphys are never silent. Not all the activities that we have are music-centered. Not all of our friendships resulted from musical interests. You need to have a more dimensional life than just the job. We laugh together lots, talk together, and enjoy being quiet together. We stay flexible. We bend, but don't break. Above all, you need to have a calendar, a 3 or a 5 year calendar, especially if both of you work, to keep track of each other's schedules so you don't overcommit. In an article on maintaining balance in your life, Jim Kennedy says, first, you need to realize that you have unique contributions to make. Don't try to do yours and someone else's too. Next, you need to understand that you'll never have time to get everything done. Prioritize and do what's important. And last, don't confuse opportunity with responsibility. There'll always be more opportunities than you have time to do. You are not responsible for doing everything.
I think the managing of time is critical importance. I can honestly say, even when I was doing the marching band, which was a huge responsibility with a new show almost every home game. It was a new show every home game. But when I would come home from work after marching band practice, my time with the children was the children's time. I wouldn't sit and read the paper. I wouldn't watch TV. We would read books. We would play. We would have dinner together. We'd put them to bed. After they were in bed, if it meant going back to the office and finish my work, I would do it then. But I would not sacrifice family time after rehearsal and give that up just because that I had a drill routine that was due the next day. I would give up hours of sleep to get that done, but not hours of time with our children. I think that time management today is really difficult because our society today says, you know, we have to work, 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 and go, and hurry, hurry, hurry. And I think some people feel that they just have to be busy. And if they're not busy, they feel like they're not being successful. Do not think that just because you're not busy, that you're not successful. They can't go together. They can't go together. So I think one of the keys is to learn to delegate. If you're in a position where you have an opportunity to share the workload with other people, we need to do that. We need to learn how to delegate, because here is an important key. I think much can be accomplished if you don't care who gets the credit. And I think sometimes our egos and our personalities will not allow us to have other people feel successful or get the credit for what they've done. So don't be afraid to delegate. Much can be accomplished if you don't care who gets the credit.
Being physically fit. Exercise together and separately. Hike, camp, climb mountains, bike, walk. These are great times to talk things over and out. Before Ray's shoulder gave out, he played a lot of racquetball, and then he changed to running. When his knees gave out, we started biking. He can still play golf, or at least he says he can hit the ball around with friends and colleagues. A few years ago, Ray got new knees, and this past August, we did our first 14,000 peak. Proof of that, in 10 years. We peaked the mountain and felt young again. We eat right, our diet is healthy, except weekends like this one. Not so good.
So just a few things in conclusion, that I think that our responsibility in being involved in arts programs is that we continually need to broaden our vision. We need to think about the things that are going to have the greatest impact on young people. We have to think about the things that are going to have the greatest impact on our own profession. We have to think about the things that will create the most interest and activity of our students that are under our control. And so to do that, it's so easy to become narrow-minded or tunnel-visioned in something that's been very successful, and I'm comfortable, I'm complacent, I'm in a rut. And I always think that the definition of a rut is a grave with both ends knocked out. So broadening your vision and always being creative and thinking to the future and what can be more practical and more satisfying is one of our main jobs that we have to do. I think that also involves the same concept of dreaming a lot. I think we have to think about what we do. I worked with an orchestra director in Parma, Ohio. It was a very large school. My school first year was in Bardolph, Illinois. You may not know where Bardolph is. It's down near Macomb, Illinois. But Bardolph, Illinois only had 52 students in the entire high school, grades freshman through senior. I only had 16 in band with no clarinets and 5 drummers. And I use that term specifically, drummers. But I learned much in that situation. I learned much in that situation, but the last job I had was at Parma Senior High School just outside of Cleveland, Ohio, and we had 3,800 students in 3 grades. And we had 180 students in the band program. The orchestra director had about 120 in his orchestral program. The choirs were beyond numbers, like rows and rows of the finest singers. And but the thing that I was able to glean from that experience was the fact that we can learn from each other. We can learn from each other. I learned much that year by watching the people that had been there before, and they helped me dream about what I wanted to do and what was possible to do in my future road in the profession that I chose to do. I think we need to simplify our lives. I think that sometimes we're so involved in so many different things that we tend to become just busy for busy's sake. I think we need to simplify. Think about what you can simplify in your life, and you'll find that you'll be much easier in living and much less stress in your life. The little quote, "A man's reach should exceed his grasp," I think is important. We have to have a vision and dreaming, but we also have to be able to go past what we can grab here and go on down the road. I also like the quote that says, "You may be on the right track, but if you just sit there, you're going to get run over." And I think that's so true in what we do. We have to continually branch out and be thinking of how and what directions we can go to be the most effective.
Before I conclude, I want to say that I know these are very different times than when we started our dash 50 years ago. I had the luxury of being able to stay home with our children while they were growing up. We didn't have to decide who stayed home from work when they had a snow day or someone was sick. However, the basics are the same. Solve the problem before it becomes a problem. Have a plan B to fall back on when plan A fails. Talk about the budget before the debt overtakes you. Realize the need for sharing in the household work. Talk about time for family, time for children, the need to compromise, and that both of your jobs are important. I've always loved being Mrs. Ray Cramer. Perhaps that's because Ray sees me as Molly Cramer, the one he cherishes, loves, and has a great time with, but also because we are usually Ray and Molly. We're a pair pulling together, never apart. It's often assumed that I'm a musician too. In fact, when our kids were in junior high, I started back subbing, and the first call I got was for a middle school band. I said, "I'm not a music teacher." The reply was, "Yes, but you're married to a band director." So now when people ask what I majored in, I tell them my degree is in A and A. It means accompanying and applauding. I accompany Ray every place he goes and applaud everything he does. We've always felt that it's important to make a difference in the life of others. However, just wanting to make a difference won't make it happen. You have to deliberately put your abilities and motivations into the opportunities that you're given, always remembering that even the small things you can do make a big difference in someone's life. The glue that holds our dash together, is our faith in God, our faith in each other and the dash we're living, and our faith in the value of investing in the lives of others. Now there are our priorities: family, professional life, and health. Each of these has had changes within them as they went by: children and then empty nest, changed family priorities as with the death of an adult child, guest conducting and retirement changed professional life priorities. Broken down knees and new knees have changed health priorities. Each time there was a change, we had to put the rocks back together in another balanced way, and it was a different formation, but the new formation was just as effective in our lives.
Yeah, we each day strive to want to make a difference in people's lives. It's not easy. It's a task that is often more difficult and demanding as we attempt to maintain that very tenuous balance between faith, home, and work. We can't allow our schedules, our professional engagements, our obligations, job demands, and all the time crunches that we feel, we can't allow those to become our worst enemies. We have to learn to embrace those and to fit them in a way that does not disrupt our life together and with other people. There's nothing wrong with going the extra mile, but when the extra mile begins to disrupt our effectiveness in the teaching that we do and how we interact with other people, and particularly our lives and our health, then it's time for a very careful and honest personal evaluation. I really love this simple thought of Albert Einstein. There's two ways we can live our life. One is as though nothing is a miracle. The other is as though everything is a miracle. I really believe that being involved in arts education, being involved in music education, being involved with literally thousands of students over a course of 52 years of teaching in the education field, that has been a great, great blessing for us in our life. And I just hope that when that last date is written on my tombstone, that there will be enough people that can write the epilogue and say that you made a difference in many different ways in our lives. So once again, just what is it that you want to remember about how you spend your dash? The most important thing is love deeply, love long, and enjoy each day as just the ultimate experience, not knowing what experience will be the next day. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you. Uh-oh. You have to know how difficult this is for my wife, because she always puts on pants that have lots of looseness around her knees because they're always knocking back and forth. So she does a great job in doing this. So thank you.